Hello and welcome back to some more The Great Dark Beyond Star ratings. Up today we have Hunter, Mage and Paladin. Also, I said I was going to upload this tomorrow, I think last time, but I thought, you know what, we'll do 2 a day instead since they're quite short videos, so we'll do the next one tomorrow, I promise you this. Anyway, first up we're going to have Hunter. We have Exarch, Nael, Rangari Scout, Alien Encounters, Parallax Cannon and Detailed Notes that make up this Discover package. I really like the idea of this package. On day one, I think this is going to be one of the most played decks out there. I certainly am going to put together a list to play this deck. I feel like this could be... Honestly, this could run into a number of different scenarios. I think you could run an aggro face-ish deck, like a face hunter type deck with Nael in it, where you're trying to discover more of your damaging spells in your deck. I can see you running this mid-range, and I think the mid-rangey one will be a little bit better, where you are fairly aggressive with your stuff, but you can hang around with the control decks a little bit, because you can generate some more value thanks to getting copies of discovered cards with Rangari Scout, and Exarch Nael giving you a draw card every single turn button that might actually be draw 2 cards for 1 mana. Insane. Parallax Cannon, I think, is a very solid add to both of these decks. Oh, and by the way, I do think you could go into a more, even slower control deck, a Highlander deck. I think there's so much flexibility with these cards. I kind of love them. Parallax Cannon, I think, will make most of these lists as well. It's a pretty good aggressive card. 3 mana 4/3 weapon is really good. And then finally, Detailed Notes, which I do think is actually a bit of the weaker one of these cards. I think there are better Discover options, but if you're a slower deck and you're intending to go beyond 5 fairly consistently, there are some pretty good 5 or more beasts to discover from Hunter, and getting a 2 mana discount on them is not an insignificant thing to do, especially if you can combine this with Rangari Scout and get, like, you know, 2 King toy plushes or something like that, or King plush even, sorry. Yeah, that's really good. Anyway, I will say, I think it is going to be a little bit too slow and ponderous, though, for the most part. I actually could see Hunter taking some while for this deck to get fully integrated together. It might get to tier 2, but I'm not actually certain. I think I could see this sitting at high tier 3 for some time. So, Rangari Scout, Alien Encounters, Parallax Cannon, I've actually given 3 stars to. I really loved the deck. I love the idea of it, but I'm just a little bit concerned about how slow it's going to get off the ground. And also, Hunter isn't great at playing from behind, so I don't know. I think it's going to be a really hard list to put together. By the way, I have given Nael 4 stars to this card. I'm not sure it's going to be in a tier 2 deck, as I said, but maybe it gets into Breakfast Hunter, which is sitting around tier 2. It's going to just get dropped into so many Hunters from now going forwards. I think it's something that the Hearthstone team will start building around to some degree. I think we'll see more and more Discover cards, and this archetype will get better and better and better. For now, there is actually quite a limited pool of Discover cards I think you want to put into the deck anyway, which actually is pretty bad for Detailed Notes, because I think that's actually not one of them. I've actually only given that 2 stars. I think most lists won't run this. But yeah, there's quite a finite pool of Discover cards. I think some of them are pretty good, some of them are on the weaker side of cards. But I think this archetype will get stronger and stronger and stronger as the next expansions come out. So I like the idea of it. I'll definitely be playing on day 1, but I'm just a little bit concerned about the opening of this deck. We don't have Biopod, Specimen Claw, and Laser Barrage, the Starship deck. We've nearly seen all the Starships now, and I think this is one of the weaker ones as well. So I've given all of these 2 stars. Sure, like people have pointed out, you could build this ginormous Starship with all the Biopods, all of the Arcanite Defense Crystals from the neutral one, whatever the Divine Shield one's called that I think most decks won't run. Build this giant Starship, and it might go face. You never know. Maybe it goes face. I mean, obviously the intention is to build ginormous spacecraft and then Yelling Yodeler, which is an accessible card for this class. I think this is way too many hoops. As I said, Hunter is not great at playing from behind, hence why they've given them Laser Barrage to try and help them play from behind. I just don't think this will happen. Also, I think Specimen Claw is one of the weakest Starship pieces out there. Almost every other class, when you build your Starship together, your 2 pieces synergize in such a way that gives you some sort of fast value on that turn. Specimen Claw and Biopod doesn't actually synergize like that. It's still slow value. It requires your opponent to be playing cards for it to go off. So, yeah, I think there's way better Hunter decks out there. So, I think this is going to be a tier 4 deck, 2 stars. Finally, I've just thrown together Gorm the World Eater and Extraterrestrial Egg together. I think the intention is you play Gorm the World Eater on the board in your Death Rattle Hunter, and Gorm will just slowly chew through your board and come up on turn 5, which means it can't attack till turn 6. But 6 mana, 12/12, you know, pretty good. Actually, I guess to be fair, it's 5 mana, 12, and then 6 mana you can attack with 12 damage. That's a lot of damage. But its effect is really brutal. You know, eating minions on your board is not a great deal because you're paying mana cost to get those eaten. So you're actually paying for the full mana cost over the course of the game as your eggs get eaten. I think there is actually some world where you're meant to put this together with the Biopod Starship deck so that Biopod could get eaten in the process. I think that is a really, really, really weak way of doing it. So I just don't think this Gorm package will work. So 1 star to Gorm. Now, Extraterrestrial Egg, I think might be the best egg that's ever been printed. Eggs normally find their ways into some sort of pretty good deck, and actually there is a Breakfast Hunter already existing. And one of the weaknesses of that Breakfast Hunter deck that has the Mysterious Egg in it is surviving the early game. Perhaps you'll just use some of the support for Breakfast Hunter rather than hitting the Mysterious Egg, and you'll just hit the Extraterrestrial Egg instead, like you'll yodel that egg, and you'll get 6/10 stats which attack lowest health enemies. That's pretty scary. That could be pretty aggressive. So I've actually given Extraterrestrial Egg 4 stars. I think this will go into a tier 2 Hunter deck. I don't think Hunter is a bad class. And actually, to be honest with you, I think if you're going to like hard press me, do I think the Discovered deck is going to be weaker than tier 3 or more likely to be stronger? I think it's more likely to go towards a tier 2. It may hit the bottom end of tier 2, but I've edged towards 3 stars for most of them. I think the egg in this Breakfast Hunter deck, Breakfast Hunter, not bad. I think it's just going to elevate it a bit more. I don't know what Breakfast Hunter really is right now in the meta. I suspect it's around tier 3-ish, so I've been a bit harsh to one of them. I think I've maybe been a bit nice to the other ones, so you may disagree with me. That's fine. I think, if honestly with you, if I could give things half stars, which I've decided not to do, I probably would put these all as 3.5. Anyway, now we get to Mage. And boy, has Mage got some packages. They have this Fire Elemental package with Blazing Accretion, Siren, Solar Flare and Spontaneous Combustion, and Blastoid, and Supernova as well. I would say I've seen some of the theory crafting streams. I think this was the deck that surprised me the most out of all the theory crafting streams. I thought Elemental or Fire Elemental Mage was going to be strong. I thought it'd be around the same power level of the other Elemental Mage deck. But honestly, seeing it in action, I think this could be the real deal. I think this might be one of the strongest decks out there. There are some really, really high roll plays where you cheat Siren out early and get an early Solar Flare, which just basically means you're going to kill your opponent's board at some point while you're constantly vomiting out elementals. And Blazing Accretion might unironically be the strongest card of the set. 3 mana 3/1 draw 3 cards is monstrous. It is truly, truly bonkers. I definitely think Spontaneous Combustion as well will make this list. And by the way, when I did the reveals for these cards, I definitely misread Spontaneous Combustion because I thought it said random enemy minion, but it actually can go face as well. So that actually elevates this card considerably because it's 2 mana, deal 4 to the opponent's face, which is really good. So yeah, I under-egged that on the reveals. My bad, I misread the card. So this will definitely make that list. The final 2 cards of this package, I think will sneak into there, but aren't as essential as the other 4. Blastoid actually could be seen as anti-synergistic, because it might break your chain of playing elementals. That being said, Blastoid plus Blazing Accretion will draw you through all these random spells pretty quickly, so I definitely think there is room to put Blastoid in that deck. And Supernova is a bit too heavy. I see this as like a big finisher for the deck if it's included. So I'm actually going to give Blazing Accretion, Siren, Solar Flare, Spontaneous Combustion 5 stars. I think these might actually be a tier 1 deck. It is really scary. I don't know what the average turn that this was getting wins at, but I definitely saw in the theory crafting. It's always dangerous to base ratings on theory crafting, which is why I don't normally do it to some degree. But if a deck is killing people by like turn 6, and I saw people dying on turn 6 to this deck, I get the feeling that it's going to be pretty strong. We've also seen a bit of a power void right now because of the nerfs to some of the big aggro decks out there. Also, one of the decks that could probably have gone toe-to-toe with this to some degree is Overheal Priest, since they have ways to damage your opponent's board and not your own board, so they could have actually played this minion v minion combat. But that deck has been gutted now, so I think there is just a real slot open for some sort of tempo-ish deck that could finish you off with some spells at the end that kills you around 6, and I think this deck fits the bill, so all of them, 5 stars. Now, Blastoid and Supernova, I've actually only given 4 stars to. I think they'll both make the cut of the list, but I think they'll be both run as a one-off. I think there's a real risk if you play 2 Blastoids early that you're going to break your elemental chain, and you just can't afford to do that because you need to, at some point, play the elemental that fills your board with elementals for every elemental you played each turn. So you still want to be playing elemental on each turn, in my opinion. But you're not going to be as hamstrung as the current version of Elemental Mage. You could probably break it early and be okay with it, but that being said, you still don't want to do it that often. And then Supernova, I think, is just too expensive for this deck. I don't think, realistically, this deck will ever get down to 8. You'll probably have won or lost by then. But there will be odd edge cases where you do get to 8, or to 9 even, and you'll play Supernova just purely to give you an increased chance to draw a damaging spell, which might be enough between winning and losing. So I think both of these cards could conceivably get cut. I don't think there's enough cards out there in the standard format for you to actually realistically cut them and feel happy about it, so they'll probably sneak in as one-offs. The other big package for Mage was this Draenei Mage package. I was somewhat underwhelmed by this when I saw it on some of the Theory Crafting streams. I will say, though, I think you could have built it better. Also worth noting, actually, on Theory Craft streams, one of the reasons why it's a pretty bad way to base your meta off it is that you have to put 2 cards from the new set in. So, you know, if you could build a really good deck, but you only wanted like 5 of the cards, you can't do that. You have to put 5 bad cards into your deck. And I think this is what happened to Draenei Mage, that you had to put some pretty bad cards in there to meet the minimum requirement of new cards in your deck. That being said, having put together the list and thinking about what it could do, I think this will go into some sort of Rayla Mage deck with some of the Paladin cards. I don't think it's going to be as explosive as the Fire Elemental Mage deck. I do actually think it'll be okay, though. I think it's going to come in at around tier 3, low tier 3 level, so I've given them all 3 stars. I was also a bit underwhelmed by Archwing Pilot, which actually, one of the first reveals came out, I thought this was going to be a really strong card. The random 3 damage actually might not be enough to cut the mustard, and it's pretty hard for you to combo lots of spells together, it turns out. The final card is Pocket Dimension, which you could argue was in this Draenei support since it works quite nicely with Archwing Pilot, but I actually think this card is just really, really weak. Sorry, Pocket Train, I'm only giving this 1 star. We did the odds on this card on the reveals, and it was basically a below odds scenario to get something better than Volume Up. Volume Up is not seeing a lot of play right now. If you really wanted something like Volume Up, you'd play Volume Up instead, so yeah. Pocket Dimension, I just don't see a world where this is put into any decks. I will mention, just as I'm on this card right now, I don't think we'd seen this at the time of Druid. If Othar finds Pocket Dimension, Druid could probably actually have a lot of fun with a Pocket Dimension, so kind of watch this space for Druid discovering this with Othar. Then we get to Paladin, and I think this is the one that the community maybe is most excited for. It's a deck from the past. People enjoyed the Libram Paladin of the past, and they quite like the idea of the Libram Paladin of the future. There's a lot of stuff to like about it. It's, you know, a mid-rangey type of deck. Certainly I am looking forward to this. It was one of my favourite decks from the past, so I really want this archetype to work. We have 2 discounting Libram cards in Interstellar Starslicer and Interstellar Wayfarer. The 3 Librams are Libram of Clarity, Libram of Divinity, and Libram of Faith. And then we have 3 support cards, Yrel, Beacon of Hope, Interstellar Researcher, and Orbital Satellite. Now, I need to mention Yrel. I actually... You know what? This is not my fault, actually. You know what? Fuck you, Hearthstone. I said that the 3 Librams from the past picked from a pool of 4 cards, because there are 4 Librams in the history of Hearthstone. It turns out it won't find the weapon, it will only ever find the 3 spells. So, why it says 3 Librams from different Librams from an older timeline on the cards, and not just the 3 old ones, I assume it's because Yrel in the future would then find Libram of Clarity, Libram of Divinity, and Libram of Faith as well, as they get rotated out. But I don't know why it just says older timelines when it won't find the weapon, or what the difference is there. I hate that Hearthstone keeps adding fruity text to cards that doesn't really tell you what the card does. So anyway, Yrel, I almost took a mark off it for that because I was kind of annoyed, but whatever. Generally speaking, this package is going to kind of... I was going to say it's going to live and die. I think this package is going to die, to be honest with you, because of Interstellar Wayfarer. I think it's too expensive for your Libram discounting minion card. The classic old version was originally it was a 2-mana 2/3 and got buffed to be a 1-mana 1/3, I think it was, because it wasn't seeing any play at 2-mana 2/3. It was just too slow to get your Librams discounted. I think in this deck, the Interstellar Starslicer is the better of the discounters, and indeed, I think you'll have to run Instrument Tech in this deck to try and find your Starslicers as fast as possible, and I think generally speaking, you want to get 2 of them instantaneously, if you could get it. and you'd play 1 on 3, 1 on 4, and break it on 5, and then actually the Libram deck then becomes viable. The other big thing about this deck is you'd really want to get your Librams discounted to 0, unlike the old ones where you were fine if, you know, they were just cheap. There's serious big payoffs for getting them down to 0, and actually it's Libram of Divinity that's really going to, like, I think make the biggest deal of this, because if you get this thing down to 0, it almost leads to an inevitability that you're going to win the game, because you're just going to break your opponent's back by playing minions, or a minion at least, with +3/+3 every single turn. I'll also mention I think Libram of Faith is a very solid card. I think people have been talking about removing this from your deck. I don't think you'd remove this from your deck. It's probably the one of the Librams, in fact all of the Librams, that you would play not at 0. It's fine to play this at like 3 or 4, and you're still getting a really good deal. Anyway, I think mainly because of Interstellar Wayfarer, and the Librams won't get discounted fast enough, I think you're going to see this as a more mid-rangey to slower deck, and because of this, I think things will get under it and it just won't be able to keep up. So I've actually given them all 3 stars. I think this is going to be a tier 3 deck, but kind of watch this space on the Interstellar Wayfarer. If they do like what they did with the old Libram and turn this into like a 3-mana 3/2 instead, then you start to like go, okay, it might not be tier 2 anymore, but it's going to come up faster. You're going to get your Libram discounts faster, which means that you're going to like move your peak performance a little bit earlier as well, which means opponents won't be able to deal with it quite as well. The final 2 cards are Celestial Aura and Lumia. I don't think either of these cards are going to go into the Libram deck. I don't think either of these cards will go into Hand Buff Paladin either, which arguably is probably going to be somewhere around this tier 1 range right now. So where do I think it's going to go? I think it's going to go into some slower decks, to speak. Like, it's almost like a Control Paladin deck, but it's not really going to be Control Paladin. It's really like Pipsy Paladin. I think that's where this card's going to get the most benefit. A deck that you're playing 1 good card per turn, and the good card is because of the effect and not the stats on it. And you'll just give that minion big stats. So like stuff like Pipsy, Kangor, Highlander Paladin might try and run this in their deck, so... And Lumia as well, I think the way I see Lumia is just like, and I mentioned this on the reveals, this is a card that just resets the game. It's like, okay, we've played, you know, turns 1, 2, 3, and 4. We've had fun, right? Let's reset our mana crystals and we'll play from 6 now. And aggro decks, they hate this one simple trick to, you know, ruin their lives, because they don't want to play at like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana. So I think Lumia will be in any Paladin deck that wants to go into the late game. There is actually a world where Lumia gets into the Libram Paladin deck just to give you this refresh. But I'm not entirely certain. Either way, I think none of these Pipsy decks or anything like that are going to be tier 1. And I'm actually not sure they're going to be tier 2. I know Pipsy's doing well right now, but I think a big part of that is because of Renathal, right? The extra 10 health is huge. Lumia is kind of like giving you extra 10 health, so maybe it does push it towards this tier 2 region, but I've decided to err on the side of caution and actually go for a full house. I've given these both 3 stars as well. I think they'll go into like some sort of tier 3 Paladin deck. It's going to be a bit more slower, a bit more value orientated. I think the most likely you're going to see this in is stuff like Earthen Paladin and Pipsy Paladin, which honestly sometimes runs the Earthen support as well. I think Kangors won't work. I think Kangors will be a tier 4 deck still, unsurprisingly. Anyway, that is the star ratings for Mage, Paladin, and Hunter. Let me know what you think. I forgot to do it again, but tomorrow we're doing Shaman, Rogue, and... who's the other one? Who am I missing? Warrior and Warlock will be last. There's a class I've forgotten. Priest. Oh yeah, of course. How could I forget Priest? We'll do them tomorrow. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, why don't leave a like, comment, subscribe. Everything helps me out. I'll see you next time. Bye.